What's up, YouTube? Phoenix here, and today I wanted to, as I always do on this channel nowadays, is share something that that's been on my mind. Just as a warning, the things that I will be talking about will be of a political nature, so you are welcome to go ahead and kindly exit. But those of you who want to stay and hear what I have to say, thank you for staying. And I promise you that nothing that I'm saying is meant to be of ill intent. It is just the understanding that I have at this point in my life. And I will always be of this mindset. So if I say anything that sounds definitive, it really isn't, because I'm still learning too. And I'm just hoping to share my voice with you. Once upon a time, a wee little phoenix worked at a popular gas station, and the manager at the time, I believe that I was a leader of the overnight crew or something along those lines. Some situation came up, don't remember what it was about, but it was an occasion where raising my voice, when I say raising, I don't mean yelling, I mean as in expressing a concern, would have been beneficial. And this manager told me that something that I will never forget. And it's, hey, you have a voice and you need to use it. Now, I don't think that this individual meant for me to use it in the context that I'm about to do, but wherever you are, thank you. You know who you are. And I'm going to be using that voice. And that's actually kind of why I decided to kind of reactivate my YouTube channel and start to use my voice, because I want to voice the feelings of my heart and the thoughts on my mind. And I want to share it with you, because I've been on this earth for 36 years, which may not be much to some people, but for me it's my whole life, and I've had quite a range of experiences, quite a diverse one, and so I feel like I don't know, have a little bit of wisdom that I can share. And the great thing about YouTube is that you can just click away if you don't like it, but you can also just hear what I have to say. You can replay what I have to say and gain a greater context without maybe your own thoughts distracting you. I mean, your own thoughts can distract you, of course, but my own thoughts distract me all the time. But I feel more comfortable addressing certain issues in this format, because then I'm not worried about what the other individual is going to say next, or being cut off by that person because they have their 2 cents they want to share. You know, on this platform, I can just finish my thought. I can say what I feel like I need to say, and then you just have the option of whether you want to keep listening or not. It's a bit more liberating this way. So, with what I have to share, take it or leave it. This is just how I feel about the matter. As every other content creator on every platform has ever said or expressed, or, you know, it just is what it is. So the topic that I wanted to talk about today is wokeness in media. I say media because my area of expertise is not just in video games, it's also in tabletop role-playing games. But regardless of whether it's video games, tabletop role-playing games, and when I say tabletop role-playing games, I mean the ones where you roll funny-looking dice sometimes, and, you know, a bunch of nerds gather around a table, and there's some kind of GM, game master, dungeon master, or whatever, trying to, like, you know, help in a collaborative storytelling experience. So when I use that term, that's what I mean. So just think of Dungeons and Dragons if you're not familiar with the genre. But there's more than just that game. There are many, many games. Some have taken the spotlight in the form of video games, such as Werewolf the Masquerade. There's also the Cyberpunk game, which originally was a tabletop role-playing game based off of the genre of cyberpunk. And then there's also Shadowrun, which is like a hybrid of Tolkien fantasy creatures, D&D fantasy creatures with cyberpunk. And then there's GURPS, which is just the generic universal role-playing system, which has a little bit of everything for everybody, and it uses just regular dice. So here lately, I've been watching a fellow YouTuber called Bomber Guy. If you're not familiar with him, he does basically commentary on video games, but also on certain political things as well. And I will put a link of his in the description, so that way you can check him out. Some of you, probably most of you that watch my content, may not agree with his worldview, but I think that he brings up a good point that, and this is regardless of your leanings, that there's extremism in just about everything. And then there's taking things at face value without checking on sources, making sure those sources are good, seeing if the podcaster or media influencer or whatever actually has sources that are even posted on their content. He kind of breaks that kind of stuff down. And there was this one thing that he did that it was a live stream of him playing Donkey Kong 64, which he said he never completed, and he wanted to do it, and he wanted to raise money for charity. And while he was on the stream, an actual politician from the United States got on the stream and started talking to him and just expressed his appreciation for him and the work that he was doing. And that, in combination with what that individual at the place of employment that I was at said, and then on top of just wanting to actually share my mind and not feel held back, it all kind of culminated. And it was inspiring to me that he evoked that kind of emotion in me. He's kind of inspiring this, you could say. So him inspiring me like he does, and another thing about him too is that he actually shows his face. Now, I listen to content from both left and right leaning on the political spectrum. I listen to both. And I've noticed that some of the folks that are on the political leaning right, not all of them, but some of them, especially the ones that I listen to, like to use avatars and like to cover their faces, and they just sort of hide their identity. Again, not all of them, but the ones that I listen to do. What was inspiring to me is that this Bomber Guy, who is very left-leaning, shows his face, and he does it really boldly, which I find that very respectable. That you can, show your identity and express your worldview, and you're not, you at least are not showing any fear, even if you are afraid. So I guess that's kind of inspiring me to do what I'm doing right now. So going back to the subject of wokeness in video games, there was once upon a time I was very right-wing leaning. It's how I grew up, the community I was raised in. That was just my worldview, and I was very extreme in my worldview. A lot of the things that I did and said were very impassioned, they were ignorant. Because I didn't have a full grasp or understanding of the things that I was really saying. Those of you that went to school with me, if you'll remember a certain social history class that I went to, I expressed my views a lot. It was a world issues class, and I expressed my opinion greatly. My teacher disagreed, and it was entertaining, I'm sure, for everyone involved, or it was cringy. I don't remember. My mind has blocked it out. But I kept some of those views for a long time. Until, for example, there was a time where my ex and my kids and myself, married at the time, we moved to Minnesota because we felt, shall I say, inspired to. I will go into what that means in another video, but just keep that in mind. And the problem with that is I did some research into the activity. I was getting out of the Air Force at the time, and I had a GI Bill to spend, and I wanted to just do something different with my life, and both of us wanted to just experience something new. So that's what we did. But what I really did was put my family in a precarious situation where we ended up having to use food stamps to get by. Being the right-wing leaning guy that I was up to that point, I thought less of people that were on the program, thinking of them as being lazy or just, almost subhuman, really, because that was the level of my extremism. But it's funny that I thought that until I had to face it myself. And yeah, it was my choices that led me to that position. But I'm glad it was there, because then my kids could eat. Some of these things that the left talks about, there's some truth to them when the things that support right-wing ideals break, or when you break them yourself, or when they fall apart. And I think that was I wouldn't say it was the start of my teaching moment, but I guess that was when my eyes were really started to begin to open. So while I was in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, I was going to school, and in one of the classes I went to, this was before, because I went to a music school, but I went to a base college thing before that. I was trying to finish out my basic degrees, or basic credits. And I'll never forget this geography teacher that was there. Like, he kind of looked like Dan Aykroyd, and he was really funny too. But he was very left-wing leaning. Our first day in class, he came in with a Bernie Sanders shirt, and it said, "Feel the burn." So I was talking with him about my political leanings at the time, and he was talking to me about some journalists that he knew of, both on the right and on the left. And I can't remember exactly what I said. I think it was something like, well, I can't trust a left. Here in the United States, we call them liberals. But, I'm addressing a world audience, so left and right's a bit more of an appropriate general term. Anyway, I think I said I can't trust a liberal media reporter, journalist, or whatever, because they're trying to push an agenda. And again, this is just how I remember it. I think it was different than this, but I remember him looking me straight in the eyes and saying, "So what agendas are they trying to push?" And he's like, he was genuinely just asking a question, and he wanted me to give him a response. And I couldn't think of anything to say. It kind of just caught me off guard, because I was, instead of being like indoctrinated, or like instead of being told what to believe, he actually was asking me what I believed in. And it started spurring in my mind, I guess, questions that I just had always assumed were not really worthy of being answered, or not really, given them consideration. But what he said started, it was deeper to me than maybe what we were talking about. And the other thing that had dawned on me when he said that was that journalists, whether they are left or right wing leaning, they have a job to do. They are the representation of freedom of speech. And whether their critiques are right or left, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they say something. And to want to silence one faction or the other is an attack on that freedom of speech. I mean, you can still disagree with them and maybe know they don't have the sources that they, or they're misinterpreting the sources that they have, or they just don't have sources at all and are talking with such confidence that they feel like they know what they're talking about. But all that aside, that's still an expression of free speech, and no one should be silenced for speaking their mind. And in the case of these journalists, it's their chosen path in life. It's the career that they want to do. They're professionals. The other thing that I learned in this geography class, so I know we've kind of really went off the rails here. I didn't really know what to say. I just know I had a lot on my mind and that I wanted to get off and say. But I'm just kind of letting this roll. I guess this is more of how I've become woke. And I'm just trying to come at this not as an aggressor, but as a peacemaker. And I'm just sharing with you my experience, and I'm hoping that maybe it'll be inspirational to you. Anyway, another thing I learned in this geography class, as we all know, global warming is a very hot topic. It has been for decades, if not longer. And I'm sorry, it's real, okay? Come on. There's ocean levels that are rising. Each, summer and winter is warmer than the last. I mean, come on, it's real, dude. But I didn't believe that at the time. I think I knew that the Earth goes through phases of hot and cold, and that ice ages come and go and that kind of thing. But I don't think I believed in the actual global warming as something that industrialism is causing and that kind of thing. So I was tasked with looking at a database, and if I had the reference, I would give it to you. But I don't have the reference. But it was a recording of temperatures in, I think it was just in Minneapolis alone. It was like in a local region. I don't think it was global. But having been in the military and having seen how official records look, and I was fresh out of the Air Force at that point, when I saw this record, it looked very official and legit. And that's exactly what it showed. It showed what looked to me like a steady increase in temperature of that area. And I got to thinking about what that professor said, and it dawned on me that scientists of all calibers are professionals at their craft, and they're trying to do the best job they can with the data that they have, with the research that they do. It's not a political agenda in that they're trying to push some kind of lie, because it's not a lie. I've seen that evidence for myself, and to me, it's real. And just because the profession that they are doing is against the right-wing narrative, it doesn't mean that it's false. So that struck a chord with me. So lots of other eye-opening events happened of a personal nature, which I will not go into detail about. But a couple of years ago, I was really questioning pretty much everything that I'd ever learned and had believed in. And it got me to really begin to change my worldview. And it's kind of where I'm at today. Because what I learned about, again, here in the States, we call it conservatism. What I learned about conservative ideals is that they're very exclusive. They follow mostly a certain structure. And in order to be a part of that, the team, like, you can only really think so many ways. And a lot of it has to do with a lot of conspiracy. And it's not just the latest ones, like with COVID and all that. It's been going back a long, long time. I mean, a lot of it has to do with distrust of the government, but it's specifically, like left-wing leaning distrust. Even though here in the States we only have two major political parties, almost as if by design, which I guess that's my conspiracy thing going. It seems very suspicious that those are the only two real options, and it's even more suspicious that votes that aren't counted for left or right, that if votes go in a different direction, that apparently they can be given to one or the other. Citation needed. But it just seems kind of wrong to me that there's only two effective options. So regardless of the conspiracies here, it seems very wrong to me that there's only two effective options. Whereas in Europe, there's multiple options, which I would much prefer that. I would prefer there to be more political options. The libertarians are trying. Just keep trying. We'll have a third party eventually. But I kind of wish there was more, Anyway, a lot of my feelings, going back to media here, they translate into the content that I watch then and the content that I watch now. One of the most prolific influencers for me was the YouTube channel E:R. ER. It stands for Enigmatic Reality. But, he's pretty right-wing leaning. And he's very, I guess we would call him edgy. He's borderline racist and sexist and everything else. But he's also funny, which makes it kind of hard to... I guess you could say he's like a guilty pleasure for me. But he also spits out a lot of anger and hate when stories, video games, movies, and all that send out a woke message. I agreed with him for a long time. But since listening to H. Bomber Guy, I kind of got a feeling, an epiphany, that, okay, so this movie wants to have this level of representation and this level of diversity and this quota or whatever. Why does it matter? It's entertainment. If media wants to have, if writers want to put in some kind of like woke message or whatever, it really shouldn't matter, because being a globalist that I am, I see all of humanity as one people. And going into another spectrum here, if you fear God, if you're of a faith that claims that everyone is a brother and sister of each other in spirit, and that God loves us all, well, it means everybody. And so to me, if the Spider-Verse wants 15 Spider-Men of all the shapes and sizes and diversity and all that, fine. Go ahead. Cool. Do it. If Marvel wants to take their beloved characters and then sideline them for a female replacement, that's fine. That's fine. I'm cool with that now. I don't like how they represent their new feminine counterparts or whatever. I think they honestly make them look worse. But just the concept of having a new generation and new generation representation, that's fine. Fine, do it. Go ahead. Because the concept of the generation wars between older and younger, that, I'm just gonna be frank, that shit needs to die. Okay? It's the same thing every single time. It's like, oh, music was better back in the good old days. Newsflash, there was no good old days. That is a fantasy, and they don't exist. You're remembering things through your interpretation of events that happened a long time ago that you don't even remember the context of probably half the time. And I do the same thing too. Nostalgia is a deep well, and it's a slippery slope. There's always good times and there's always bad times. It's just humanity. So, saying that things were better back in my day, they weren't. They were great for us as we experienced them. Those great times came to us during the most developmental parts of our lives. But those days are over. And now, we have the new generation. We have the Gen Zers. We have the Zoomers. Whatever you want to call it. It's their time to have the new experience. And they're growing up in an age with more education than ever, greater access to information than ever. It's gonna be different. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. The younger generation is smarter than me. Probably, to me, seems more compassionate, more accepting, more welcoming. And I'd rather have that. I have things I need to learn. It doesn't matter what the age is. And that's a dog, a neighbor's dog. It's barking. Hopefully it doesn't come through the recording, but, well, what are you going to do? I have like 5 neighbors and they're all around me. All of this is, coming to a point where I guess the thing that I'm trying to say is I've just had a life that's helped to mold and sculpt and change me to the person I am today. Let's choose to have joy in what makes people happy. Let's stop taking stock in negativity over others. And just because we don't understand their mindset, whomever they are, it doesn't mean that they're any less human. After all, we are all brothers and sisters in some form or fashion. We are all humans. And we should all be one united throng. I've been your host, Phoenix. I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.